This episode of Bend the Knee is brought to you by Lord Adam Parker, whose words are, from the earth, wisdom.
Hello and welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Sir Ezra the Watchful. Welcome to our Song of Ice and Fire book club. Today we're into Chapter 31, Tyrion IV of A Game of Thrones. And in A World of Ice and Fire, we are actually discussing the regions of Ice and Fire, the North, today.
Yeah.
So, a little different Maester study, actually. Kind of excited. And I think Sir Matt and I were talking about how we wanted to format the Maester study going forward, so we'll talk about that when we get there. But the North was definitely interesting to read about.
Oh man, yeah. There's a lot of it's kind of broad, just like the North, and it's got a handful of these tiny little lines, which I'm like, wow, you could like pick that one little line and go on for like hours.
Right.
So so kind of do like maybe like a briefer overview of that. Well, Sir Ezra, at the beginning of our show, we just like to remind people you can send us ravens at btkcast@gmail.com. If you want to leave us a voicemail, you can call 614-547-2350. That's what we call the Weirwood Network there, or message us on Facebook or Instagram or just about anywhere on social media.
Yep. Actually, something interesting. Before I forget, remind me to bring up my beef with the werewoods when we get to the Maester study. Did you catch the thing today about?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Skagos.
Cool. Don't forget that. I want to.
Where they're talking about the
Yeah.
We'll get
Okay.
We'll get
right.
we'll get to that. But real quick, Sir Ezra, how's everything going?
It's going well. I've got a fresh new haircut, so that always makes you feel good. Went in there and got touched up. I kind of feel like I'm ready to ride into a tourney. You know what I mean? Got to get got to polish the armor up. Get a little fresh cut, because people, they get maimed and they get, sometimes they lose their life in these tourneys. So you might as well go in looking dashing. So that's really all I've done today. But been busy and looking forward to the fall. It is now like. Yeah. It really feels like fall over here in Ohio, so I'm really excited for that. It's my favorite season. So
nice, yeah. It is. I think winter is starting here in the Kingdom of Portland.
Yeah,
there's really two seasons. There's winter and summer, and
right.
it was raining yesterday. Yesterday I went wine tasting, which is actually the first time I think I've actually ever done that.
I meant to text you back about that. Yeah.
So it was kind of cool. We went to a handful of vineyards, and it was just really cool, really nice, kind of out in the Oregon country. There was one we went to, I don't remember the name, but I sent you some pictures where it's like this like cave. We had to walk through this cave, and there's like barrels. And
wow.
as we're walking through it, I sent you that picture, and I was kind of like, I don't know, I felt like I was walking through like the keep. Like the Red Keep, and these are barrels of wildfire or something. I was real nervous. I was just real nervous, but it was pretty cool. Yeah, I sent you some pictures of that. Maybe I'll post them in the group. But it was super cool. It was the first time I'd ever done it. I'm not
That's
really
awesome.
a big.
That kind of reminds me of House Red Wine, of the Arbor. I was thinking you were going to go with that. I wonder, if it tasted. Was it good wine? Did it taste good?
Oh man, there were so many. Like we went to, it was like I think we counted. We did around 30 tastings. So it was a lot.
Right.
Yeah, it was a lot. And then just to watch some of the games. Watched Ohio State, Penn State, and then watched Oregon blow up Cal. So So awesome. It was good. It was good. Just some feasting. Before we get back to work today.
Yeah. You got to purge, get it all out there, and then get back to work. So
yeah, so anyway, so yeah, everything is kind of good out here. Well, let's go ahead and move on over to the Small Council, where we talk about some news. And I have something from the show here real quick. I think I'll talk about this, and then don't let me forget that not everyone listens to our Fallout Friday. Some people just plow through the read-throughs, so we got to talk about that Fire and Blood preview again.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
So okay, so there's always these kind of interviews going on where they're asking people, like producers and stuff, about what Game of Thrones, what's going on, and we always, anytime I find something, I'll bring it up. And the visual effects supervisor. Okay, so we're getting really kind of deep and sunny here on Joe Bauer. Okay. Somebody had asked him about Ghost. And I guess I don't really remember this, but I guess that Ghost was actually not shown in season 7.
Wow.
Yeah,
really?
I just missed it. I guess there is a deleted scene in where Jon had kind of petted Ghost and said, like, watch over Sansa as he's getting ready to leave. But it was a deleted scene, and he was they were kind of just talking. They must have been talking about something, but he said that he is here to tell you that Ghost will be pretty prevalent actually in season 8.
Okay.
Which I find really interesting and intriguing.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, you'll see him again. He has a fair amount of screen time in season 8." He explained that he explained that the lack of direwolves in the shows, the reason they're not as prevalent as they are in the books, he said it's just kind of hard because, especially once they become dire wolves. He said, I guess he was talking about some of the tech they use, and they use kind of regular wolves like film and animation, and they kind of scale it, right, to size, and so I think it's kind of difficult. That way, it seems not as CG, right? Because sometimes as we've watched things like Star Wars, for example, sometimes you and I are kind of big Star Wars fans, and we talk about like the prequels where everything is CG, and it looks really good. But then sometimes I think you and I are both kind of have talked about this about episode 7, where you kind of have the practical effects and then you switch to the CG characters. It seems kind of sometimes it could just seem kind of wonky.
Yeah, it clashes. Yeah.
It can clash sometimes. But I've never Game of Thrones. I've always thought the animation and everything is like amazing.
Yeah.
So
Right.
So anyway, so that's just, he talked about some of the difficulties specifically with the wolves, and he said I think it has something to do why the direwolves are in the show, but they're not maybe as integral as they are in the books, just because it's kind of hard to work with them, and he said, like, unlike the show, which has killed off two of the Stark's direwolves, the books aren't quite as the books aren't quite as rough to the direwolves, right? There's still a lot of them alive in the books, and so I just thought it was kind of interesting. He says Ghost shows up and he does some, let's just say he's very present, and he does some pretty cool things in season 8.
Like, what could that mean? I mean,
I know.
What's he up to?
I don't know.
And again, we're talking show, so is he at Winterfell now? I mean, obviously he must have went with Sansa then,
right?
And, after the Battle of the Bastards. Gosh, I don't know. Kind of doing his own thing there. What? Maybe he goes maybe John's learning more how to warg into Ghost, and
maybe, or perhaps Ghost is Ghost. Well, Nymeria. There's the Nymeria possibility, and like Nymeria has a pack of wolves, and I think it would be cool. And I've seen a lot of people talk about that maybe. Like that pack of wolves is going to come assist in the big battle that we know happens.
Oh, okay.
What we think is the battle of Winterfell, right, where they filmed it for like 55 nights or something, like outrageous. So I mean, it's possible.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, it is possible. That would be interesting.
Maybe we'll see Ghost. Maybe we'll see Ghost kind of fight in that, save Jon or something.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Here's a question: is it possible that Ghost and Nymeria make it out of season 8 alive?
Yeah, they have to. I feel like at least one of them has to.
Right.
I don't
Is
know.
it going to be, or is it like a Hedwig moment, right? In Harry Potter, Hedwig kind of dies like right out the gate of season or the final book, you know?
Yeah, to kind of to sacrifice their self, right, for one of their Stark, companions. Yeah, that would be kind of neat. I'm kind of thinking of Ghost as more of like a scout, and once he can remember what's his face. I was a skin changer, and he could kind of like warg into his hawk, and you have those guys yeah. So I'm thinking maybe he could go do some scouting for him or something. That would be maybe Bran kind of talks to him about his abilities, and he can have some more control over those things, which would be neat. But I don't know. Yeah, I didn't even realize Ghost wasn't in season 7, which is crazy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So I know sometimes you just miss out on these things, but
hey,
yeah,
you know
so
what?
anyway. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that would be a cool thread or something for us to talk about on Fallout Friday. Honestly, like what people think, like predictions, because we've always said it's really easy to do show predictions. Once we get closer to the show, we're gonna have more of those. You and I have done episodes where it's like who lives, who dies. What is the Night King's, if he were to invade, how would he do it? So yeah, what is Ghost? What is Ghost's role in season 8? Let us know.
Yeah. Let us know, or just in the books going forward.
Yeah.
So.
Either one. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So we talked about it quite a bit in Fallout Friday, but I feel like we have to talk about it again now that I've read it a little bit more and I can kind of digest a little bit.
Yeah.
This Fire and Blood preview.
Yeah.
That was released on Gur's website. Not a blog or GeorgeRRMartin.com. He's moved his blog there. So not a blog is there, and you can kind of see it. And so first of all, we get that huge like illustrated page of King Jaehaerys and Queen Alicent, and then we get kind of that. It looks like it may be a page or two excerpt from the book.
Yeah, and it's basically about as you said, Jaehaerys and Queen Alicent, right? And their trip north. So kind of fitting today that we're talking about the North, and then this. Yeah,
because there's a line in the preview or in this book or this Maester study, the North part of World of Ice and Fire. So I guess we can kind of talk about it a little bit too, not to get too far ahead, but where they talk about the gift. So now after having read that preview, I'm wondering, was Queen Alicent and King Jaehaerys' plan to go up to the North to deal with them about the gift? Because remember how it talks about how the King Stark was kind of hesitant about the gift because he thought it would be too big for the Night's Watch, and then they're always turned north so they wouldn't kind of actually rule over these lands, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, there's that. I also thought too it was the Queen Alicent just being she was very charming, right? Too, so she kind of wins over Lord Stark, and she's when she goes to the Night's Watch, she sees the desperate need, that they're in, and is able to kind of, I think it disturbed her that her dragon Silverwing couldn't go beyond the wall.
Right.
So there's curiosity there, and then the state of the wall wasn't looking too good. They needed more provisions. So it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of what you're saying, and then also just the curiosity going up there and seeing what's happening with the Night's Watch. They're kind of
right.
I bet they're kind of a mystery to the Targaryens, really.
Oh, for sure.
Because especially reading the North today and looking at how long the Night's Watch has been around, it was well before the conquest. It's been around for thousands of years, So it's an ancient order. So I don't know. just real,
it's a lot.
Real interesting. But.
It's a lot. Yeah, but if you haven't read it, so we broke it down more the other day in our Fallout Friday, but and then people in the group were talking all about it.
Yeah.
But highly encourage you to go check it out. So. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on over to our Maester's study here.
Yeah.
Sir Ezra, we're kind of talking. So we've finished actually with the Targaryen kings, and the one Baratheon king, And so now we're actually into kind of the region. So we've kind of come full circle. Before we were talking about just kind of the big, huge history. And that's a little bit more of the way I think these chapters read.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely. And they're actually pretty heavy in history. And did you notice that it's not necessarily chronological? Like
No, it's definitely not. It jumps all over the place.
Which is crazy because I was thinking like, oh, cool, we're going to go back and get, some of the, like basically the information would be presented in order, but that's not the case. Of course, it couldn't be that simple. So
right, yeah. So what I was kind of thinking, and what you and I were kind of talking about is, as we talked about this in Follow Up Friday a little bit, but I think we'll just kind of mention it again. We've been kind of asked, now that we're almost done with these Targaryen kings and Fire and Blood is coming and possibly Winds of Winter next year, how are we going to kind of adapt the show to that to kind of cover everything? Mm-hmm. And really, we're just going to kind of slide, as we're almost done with this book, we're just going to kind of slide the Fire and Blood right into this Maester study. And,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's really, and then when Winds comes out, we can deal, with that a little bit more. Yeah,
absolutely, for sure. So we talked that we would possibly with the North just kind of keep it short. Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably with all of these, because otherwise we would be spending the next 3 years on it. Because there's really a lot of research that has to go into it. Otherwise, it's just kind of these chapters they're big, but they're really brief. So
yeah, but they and they have a lot of they make a lot of connections to the series, and they introduce a lot of characters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was what was kind of mind-blowing for me, is that they're introducing all of these ancient, I guess what I'm saying is that, you get all of the Targaryen Kings piece was cool, but this now is sort of, if you wanted that day-to-day sort of like those lesser lords or more that house history, this is where it's at. This is where it really gets kind of, nitty-gritty. And it's actually pretty fascinating. I think we said we would go brief, but also possibly when we're done with A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, our Dunk and Egg series on Patreon. Yeah, yep. That we would maybe do a full region study.
Right, and that way we can do way more in depth, kind of character studies, stuff like that. Yeah. So okay. So I think I'll start here, because I find I always find the opening passages. I think they're really well written.
Yeah.
The vast and frigid realm of the Kings of Winter, the Starks of Winterfell, is generally considered the first and oldest of the Seven Kingdoms, in that it has endured unconquered for the longest, and the geography and history are set apart from their southern neighbors. It is often said that the North is as large as the other 6 kingdoms put together, but the truth is somewhat less grand. The North, as ruled today by House Stark of Winterfell, comprises little more of a third of the realm, beginning at the southern edge of the neck. The domains of the Starks extend as far north as the New Gift. Within the north are great forest, windswept plains, hills and valleys, rocky shores, and snow-covered mountains. The North is a cold land, much of it rising moorlands and high plains, giving way to mountains in its northern reaches, and this makes it far less fertile than the reaches of the south. Snow has been known to fall there even in summer, and it is deadly in winter.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Is it possible for us just to kind of point out some of these, keeps in different places on the map? Do you think that
absolutely.
might be?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was just thinking, obviously Winterfell, right? That everything starts
for sure.
there. That's the main, castle. But what I didn't really know, and it was just made more apparent to me, I guess, in this portion of the book, you have a town. You've got a small town right outside of Winterfell, right? So which is interesting. So when those winter snows come, a lot of the mountain clans and different people would come to this town of Winterfell. And I thought that was kind of interesting, because there's really not, what did they say? There's one major city.
Yeah.
There's basically one major city in the north, and that is White Harbor. And that's it. That's a major city, I guess.
The rest are kind of small keeps with kind of surrounding, just farmers or town, like tiny little towns, right? Like maybe there's an inn or something, but
right, very tiny. Because the other significant town is Barrowton, which has a really cool history. The Barrow Kings in the Barrowlands, which I didn't know much about. Lord Dustin and those guys used to back in the day. Back in the day, what was crazy is that you had the kings. You had a king at Winterfell, but there was also the Barrow Kings. You had the Red King, right? You had all these different kings up in the north. And the Starks had to kind of slowly put them all down.
Yeah, that's basically what happens, and it takes them like it says it takes them like 1,000 years, or or something to that nature. So, when you think about Aegon's conquest, it was kind of like, seems like it was a span of like 3 years, but when if you go way back to when we were talking pre-Aegon's conquest, we were talking about the Dawn Age and the Age of Heroes and all of these things, and these are like with span over thousands of years. So
right, yeah. Actually, I found this is a pretty good paragraph here. I'll read this. So, White Harbor, the North's sole true city, is the smallest city in the Seven Kingdoms. So even though it's like it's the only city there, the only true city, it's the smallest in the Seven Kingdoms.
Right.
Most prominent towns in the North, the most prominent towns in the North are Wintertown, which I was talking about, which is beneath the walls of Winterfell, and Barrowton in the Barrowlands. And so those are your towns and cities. And then everything else is a keep. You've got Carhold, the Dreadfort, Ramsgate. There's so many. The map is so cool. So if you haven't bought the hard, the actual paperback or the hardcover
it's so good.
edition of this, it's worth it because it's got some really awesome maps in it.
Yeah. Well, something else is when you look at the map, and you kind of wonder, well, when I look at this map, I'm like, well, why is White Harbor really that big of a city? And it's kind of because, you've got these two rivers that kind of converge and then go down here, and you've got White Harbor, which is kind of in this bay, but you've really kind of got to sail all the way around the Vale, excuse me, the Vale here, and then you look more up north, and you think, well, the free cities would be able to sail up there, but that you've got Skagos, which we'll talk about, and how Skagos is kind of its own thing, and they're kind of like really wildlings, if you really want to get into it.
Yep.
And then to the other side, you've got Pike and the Iron Islands, so there's no way sailors really aren't going to risk sailing through that to kind of get there, and so it really is just kind of that first place for a big city, because before that you've got like Greywater Watch and Moat Cailin, which are swamplands, and other than the fact that the King's Road goes through there, that land's just kind of uninhabitable for like a big city. So White Harbor is just kind of that most southern area where you could actually have one that's not like totally overrun by forest or like swamplands. Yeah,
and I would say that's the main trade route, right? So if you're at the Fingers, or you're in the Vale there, or even King's Landing, as you said, sailing up around, through the Bight and then into White Harbor and then up the White Knife, that's how you would get goods, really up into the north.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's basically it. You can also go over, there's another spot, the last river near the Dreadfort, where you can kind of head in through there, but honestly, looks like it takes a little longer. It might not be as profitable when you can just go right through White Harbor. And we haven't talked about the Manderleys yet, but that's a real cool connection to how they were once in the Reach. Is that where they were at?
And right, yeah, they were in the Reach. And the Manderleys also have a better reputation than obviously the Boltons. Like the Bolton, if I'm a trader, I do not want to go anywhere near the Dreadfort.
Right.
I mean, that's So,
you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
So yeah, it's just really cool. Some other things we'll just kind of pick apart here. Something I found interesting before it kind of moves into, it's kind of weird. It goes into the Kings of Winter section, and then it kind of goes back to some of the different areas. But just something I thought interesting here. We've talked about this before. As knighthood is rare in the North, the knightly tournament, and its pageantry and chivalry are as rare as hen's teeth beyond the neck. Then it goes on to just say that Northermen don't really fight in tourneys, but they do and have had before big melees is kind of what they have. They don't really do lance. And it says that their melees are pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty much, it goes on to say it's serious injuries are as common and such as a melee, and deaths are not unheard of. In the Great Melee at the Last Hearth in 170 AC, it is said that no fewer than 18 men died, and half again that number were sorely maimed before the day was done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's pretty intense. I mean, that's definitely a different type of, format or form of entertainment, I guess. For
right.
The,
and
for the
and
North.
when you think about it, I think that's maybe another part of why Ned Stark is kind of upset about having this tourney in his name, because in the North you just don't have tourneys. It's also a big expense, and he doesn't want it because he's just Ned Stark. That's just not his thing to have this big pageantry. But there's that other part to it too, I think, is in the North that you just don't have tourneys. So that's like another kind of part of why he doesn't. Maybe he's upset about it.
Yeah, it's just another layer, right?
It's not.
Not
It's not
as
their,
comfortable.
it's not their people. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Although they do, I think I guess if you were I'm trying to think of the different houses here. So I mean, obviously, Greywater Watch, House Reed, they end up at the tourney at Harrenhal. So they do travel to tourneys. But as for holding their own in the North, they're not really the same. So.
Right. Well, and the tourney at Harrenhal is also a tourney that I think. Because it was so big and so grand, everyone went, because I cannot think of many other times where we really hear of northern houses actually showing up to these tourneys. Like even in the Mystery Night, like we know that's pretty far up. That's in like the Riverlands, isn't it?
I think so.
Or like this right around there, the southernmost part of the North, and we don't really hear of many northern houses that we know of attending. So, I mean, it is also kind of a smaller house and stuff, but...
Yeah. Well, another thing with the Tourney of Harrenhal is that there was possibility to conspire against the king.
Right,
So
absolutely.
there's that whole front. So that could have been, part of why they were there. But I imagine that when northern men show up at a tourney like that, that's pretty cool. I mean, I think that's like, it's exciting when, like, the more people who show up, it's a chance to really represent like your region or your liege lord, So that's, I don't know, kind of neat when they show up.
Yeah.
But
so something interesting here in the book, they show that picture right in the Kings of Winter page, and they show like they have the Stark sigil in the middle, and then they have some of their like more prominent bannermen around, and I just kind of want to mention it because I think it's cool. You have House Glover, House Risewell, House Manderley, House Dustin, House Bolton, Taldhart, Reed, Umber, Karstark, Hornwood, and Mormont. So those are kind of, I guess, what you would consider the more prominent houses in the North.
Yeah. Right. Even though, like, right next to it, it's listing off a bunch of other smaller houses too, which is the cool part, right? Is that it gives you so much. There's so many little houses here. Where's the one house? The from the game.
Forrester, House Forrester.
Yeah, House
they're there.
Forrester.
Yeah, they're
Where are they
somewhere in the.
Yeah.
I think they're to the left of like Barrowtown, if I had to take a guess, because they're in a very thick forest. I'll do a search here. But they are an actual house.
Fun connection. Yeah,
and they're mentioned in the books.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. And I think I don't really know.
Yeah, they're in the Wolfswood of the North.
Okay.
Which is
the
Wolfswood is right around house like Kerwin and Deepwood Mott.
Yeah. You're right. Okay. Yeah, because they're in charge of the Ironwood. Or isn't that what it's called? What's it called? Ironwood.
Yeah, the Ironwoods. Yeah, the big
Production.
sentinel trees. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. That's
So
really neat.
yeah.
I think the other thing I wanted to talk about with the North was just that there's like their customs, so they kind of talk like they're serving the old gods. They say they've like they mentioned this with the werewoods, and they kind of talked about how, and the part that I'm thinking about is a little bit different than the one that you were thinking about, but they're both really interesting. The idea that they were putting the entrails up in the werewoods. Like basically,
no, I don't remember that.
Yeah, so I read this might even be at the end of the North, but for their crimes, like when they would one of their customs, right, was to to like in the ancient days, if they caught someone stealing or murdering or whatever, like they would hang, I think, their entrails up in the weirwood trees and stuff. And I just kind of thought, wow, another scary sort of image. You know, the werewolves are always wanting like blood sacrifices and things like that, and it's just a different different type of people. They also talk about guest right and how important that was. So there was that. More important than even like the Andals don't take it as as serious as Northerners do. Or the First Men, because they're descended from the First Men. So.
Yeah. So two things I kind of want to talk about just real briefly here, and I think that I just kind of want to mention them because I think that we kind of forget about them, and I would actually love to at some point do a much bigger breakdown about the clans, like the mountain clans.
Yep.
And then kind of the island of Skagos a little bit.
Yeah.
But these mountain clans, we see them. Actually, we'll see them in the chapter we're going to read today. It's just kind of a chapter in the Vale, right, with Tyrion. But Jon Snow encourages Stannis to go seek out these mountain clansmen. He said, you might be able to get 1,000, a thousand troops. And it is different how they're different. And we talk about how they're pretty much wildlings. They just live in the realm. So it just talks about the northern clans. You have like the wolves, the fish folk who dwell among the shores of the Bay of Ice, and they hate the wildlings. Yeah, they utterly hate the wildlings, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think it's because of their proximity, just because they get raided there, quite a bit, or not exactly sure why. I think it's more just their because they also, it talks about their hatred of the men of the Iron Islands, who often raid along the shores of the bay, burning their halls, carrying off their crops. So if they hate the wildlings more than they hate the Ironborn, then you can imagine that the wildlings are doing the same thing, if not worse. So.
And then just real quick, the Stoneborn of Skagos. So Skagos is something that has always kind of intrigued me, because if you look at it on the map, right, part of it actually extends beyond the wall, where the wall would be. Now it's an island just off of off the mainland of Westeros, but some of it, some of these islands here are actually above the wall. So that's why some people kind of consider them wildlings. I just found it interesting here. The Skagos who reside there are little regarded by the other Northmen, who consider them no better than wildlings and name them Skags. The Skagos call themselves Stoneborn, referring to the fact that Skagos means stone. And it says they have a strong mixture of Ibanezan blood, and some suggest they may have descended from giants. I just found this interesting. It is claimed they still offer human sacrifice to their weirwoods. That was something I found quite interesting. Yeah, and we know that's where Rickon is sent, kind of to be hidden.
It's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah, they're even luring ships in, with like false lights, and they feed upon the flesh of men during the winter. Now that's rumors, So.
Yeah, and it's also rumored that they have unicorns.
Yeah,
and it says the occasional unicorn horn offered by a disreputable merchant has never been more than a horn of a kind of whale hunted by the whalers of Ib. However, horns of a quite a different kind, reputed to be from Skagos, have been seen by the maesters at Eastwatch upon occasion. So it's just something that, like they don't know what it is, but there's clearly something there. Maybe it's like a ram or something. I don't know. They don't really seem to know what it is. Right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a rumor too that they have giant's blood, in their veins. So that's kind of neat.
And it talks about how some of the Skagos have served in the Night's Watch. More than 1,000 years ago, a Crowl, which is a member of a clan that passes for nobility on Skagos, was even Lord Commander for a period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then it goes on to talk about the Kranich men for a little bit, and just kind of some of the rumors about them. Then it goes on to kind of talk about the Lords of Winterfell and just a little bit of history about them. And one thing I found interesting here, this little passage, whether anti-Targaryen feelings were made worse by Queen Rhaenys Targaryen's efforts to knit together the new single realm with marriages. So this is going way back to Rhaenys Targaryen.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt.
Yeah. Yep.
His daughter was wed to the young and ill-fated Lord of the Vale. But there are letters preserved at the Citadel suggesting that Stark accepted these arrangements only after much protest, and that the bride's brothers refused to attend the wedding entirely. So that line right there, that the bride's brothers refused to attend the wedding entirely. So something that we don't know is maybe it's possible. Just sometimes we like to draw parallels.
Yeah.
Maybe Rhaegar had offered to Lord Stark about Lyanna, and maybe he said no. You already have a wife.
Okay.
I don't know. Sometimes sometimes you see these parallels here, and I'm like, okay,
right.
Okay, I don't know. It just causes me to think about things.
Well, what's interesting is, wouldn't that fall in like what you just read there? Wouldn't that fall as something that we might get more on in Fire and Blood coming out?
Well, yeah, maybe we will. Yeah. Some of
with like Rhaenys and
it won't be about Rhaegar and stuff, but yeah. So this is maybe something that we will get in Fire and Blood. Will be further stuff about Aegon and these arranged marriages. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. So there's definitely a major protest from it, and and at the time too, they're not. Over time, I think they do become much closer with the Vale, and like, well, at least during Ned's time, I guess, and that could just be because of Jon Arryn. But they often trade, like as I mentioned, their White Harbor becomes that port in which the Vale. Because the Vale has difficulty moving goods over that mountain range. Right now in the chapter that we're reading, Catelyn Stark is trying to make her way from the inn at the crossroads over to the Vale, and it's difficult. So, I don't know, just kind of, something to think about. So, I don't know, anything else? Oh, I wanted to mention one more thing here about the, let me go back to the map. So at one point in the northern region here, this whole section, I don't even know what to call it, the North, it talks about how the Starks of old moved down, and they basically captured or claimed like Cape Kraken and the Neck, and became close with Greywater Watch. It didn't always used to be. Actually, everything south of Moat Cailin. Yep. Is basically that stronghold is something that they were able to capture and make their own. So at one point, that was not considered the North, a part of their region. When again, it was one of those things too. Before the North actually comes to be a thing, you had many different smaller kingdoms inside of the North, which is what they say at the start of this, section here. But I just thought it was kind of interesting that now, it is a permanent sort of part of the North. So
yeah. So, all right. Well, I think we might just leave it there. That's just kind of a brief overview of this chapter. Unfortunately, going forward, these chapters, they kind of jump around quite a bit, and they just talk little bit about specific things. So next week, I think is it the Wall?
Oh gosh, I didn't look.
It's okay. I think so. Yeah, I think the Wall is kind of its own little chapter.
Okay.
As I look here, yeah, I think it is. It's its own kind of little chapter. So we'll certainly save that that for next week. So
because one thing we could have gone over all those different subheadings, which were like the Kings of Winter, the Kranich Men, Skagos. We could have gone over all those in depth, and we will in our Patreon series, I think is what we're saying. Just because,
yeah,
I mean, that would probably be a 2-hour episode.
It'd be a 2-hour episode just on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, all right. Well, let's go ahead and move on over to our reread.
Yeah.
And This week we are in Tyrion IV. So last week we were in Eddard VII. After viewing the body of Sir Hugh, Ned and Sir Barristan Selmy had struggled to convince King Robert not to compete in the melee. The Hound had won the tourney when he had saved the life of the Knight of Flowers. Later, Varys had visited Ned to reveal that Robert was meant to die in the melee. So the last time we were in a Tyrion chapter, Tyrion had dined with the high officers of the Night's Watch and promised Lord Mormont that he would speak to the king of their need. Afterwards, he had paid a final visit to the Wall. Tyrion had met with Jon Snow, who asked Tyrion what he can do to help his brother Bran. So this is, again, where we talk about sometimes if you want to do that POV read, you kind of got to go into some other people's chapters, because we had a Bran chapter that featured Tyrion and Catelyn chapter, which featured Tyrion's. But so this week, Tyrion finds himself finds he is being taken to the Eyrie instead of Winterfell, which will fool any attempt to rescue him. His attempts to convince Lady Catelyn of his innocence are interrupted when the Vale Mountain clans attack. During the fight, Tyrion saves Catelyn, and afterwards he explains that Littlefinger's accusation has a hole. Tyrion would never bet against his family. So, Sir Ezra, I kind of have this split up. I know sometimes we like to do thirds, but this week I have it split up into fourths, just because it's kind of a long chapter. So the first part is often and loudly.
Yeah.
The second part is a Lannister always pays his debts. The third part is the attack, and the fourth part is I never bet against my family.
Yeah. Which, so I thought this chapter was fairly straightforward. I'm always looking for mysteries and connections, and the only thing that really stuck out to me was Tyrion's telling of that tale, and then he kind of has to stop it because of the attack. So we'll get to that later, but I was like, I wonder, just in reading it again, if there's any new details that I can kind of glean from it. But really,
this
pretty straightforward.
This chapter is often in writing, right? You're either going to go one of two ways. You have kind of like character development or plot, and this is a pretty actually heavy character building chapter for Tyrion as well as Catelyn, and we kind of get to see just how, because we've heard so much that Tyrion is smart, but this is really the chapter where Tyrion kind of proves just how smart he is and kind of crafty. As well as Catelyn, and they kind of have this battle of wits, really, and then of course the attack happens, but really it's kind of this battle of wits that is actually both of their kind of stories for the next like 2 or 3 chapters for each of them, pretty much, as we know they travel to the Vale. And we're also, I think, really introduced to a new character this week, Bronn.
Yep,
this is kind of the first Bronn chapter. Yeah.
Which, real quick, it doesn't say it in this chapter, but I was looking back. He's just a sellsword. Well, it says that he's a sellsword, but he was in Catelyn's last chapter one of those that rose to take the imp into custody. So that's why he's traveling with them.
Yeah. So it kind of starts, and Tyrion is already captured, and he's now kind of remembering back to the events that happened like just after that last Catelyn chapter ended. Yeah, like there's a little bit of time in between, and he's kind of filling us in on what had happened. In his memory, and it just you have Chiggin, right, who's like cutting up Tyrion's horse, and like, hey, we're gonna eat Tyrion's horse. And just, that's kind of interesting. So then Tyrion kind of starts to remember, just this line right here. If Lady Stark believes I have some crime to answer for, I will go with her and answer for it. It was the only possible course. Tyrion, trying to cut their way out was a sure invitation to an early grave. Tyrion, this is where we kind of get Tyrion's thought process on how to best handle this situation when he has all these knights around him with swords, right? Or, men around him with arms pointed at them.
Right. Yeah, so there's just here in the beginning, and I couldn't tell. I thought these were passages you wanted to read, but I got you here. This is he's the connection to the Dothraki. So with the horse, they're again trying to connect us over across the sea to the Dothraki, talking about how they prefer horse meat, and Tyrion's just disgusted by it. Brings up, as you said, that this was given to him on his, what name day was it? 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
You said 23rd name day or something like that. So I don't know. It's kind of the start for all of this, and it's a lot of scheming. So like again, Tyrion is trying to have conversations. He is at first kind of blindfolded, or he has a hood over his head, right? I mean, not right here, but he's like as he's traveling, they start off with that hood, and so you kind of see this back and forth. Once it's taken off and he's able to talk to these guys, he starts to kind of subtly persuade them. It's very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Like by the end, he's trying to win these guys over, and at the end of the chapter, I think he's sort of done that, So that to me was like the overarching theme here, is that through conversation, and even with Bronn, he's just sort of using comedy, using his wit, trying to converse with them, and what have you. So, but yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, just a line right here. I think it's funny, and so kind of going back to where Tyrion is captured, right? Remembering, it just talks about Catelyn Stark's. What is his name? The Master at Arms,
Roderick, Sir Roderick.
Yeah, and so it's just Tyrion saying here. He recognized the gruff voice, Winterfell's master at arms, short of his whiskers. Scarlet-tinged spittle flew from the fat innkeep's mouth as she begged of Catelyn Stark, "Don't kill him here." And then Tyrion yells, "Don't kill him anywhere." And that's just a very Tyrion kind of line, just the way he is written. He always has a lot of these like follow-up little, quirps and, japes at people's lines and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Catelyn says, very loudly, we're taking him back to Winterfell.
Yeah.
She thought.
Yeah, we might as well talk about that. That's sort of the battle of wits, right? Is that right there? She had the foresight to kind of see that if she said that, she was kind of sending the would-be Lannister riders or future Lannister riders in the wrong direction, because Tyrion is also thinking at this time, right? That he is. He's dismayed when they do take the hood off of him, because he sees where he's headed, and he realizes he's been outplayed.
Right, and because Tyrion had said, my father will wonder where his son has been, and what has become of his son, quite loudly, as as well, because he knows that people will go, tell Tywin, hey, Catelyn Stark's taking your son, because.
Yeah. Yep. Good point. Well, I even actually think whether she would have said she's taking him to Winterfell or to the Eyrie first wouldn't have mattered, because she could have changed directions either way. So, like, once she sees he's saying stuff like that and sending those messages, all she has to do is give one direction. It doesn't matter which one, and she could change it, or she could, once she said Winterfell, then she has to go a different way. You know what I mean? But
right. Well, do you? Well, I mean. Do you think that she should have went to Winterfell? Thinking like,
I think they actually would have caught. I think they would have been caught.
Right.
Unless she would have, because she's closer to River Run. That would have been okay. And I'm surprised she doesn't go there. Actually, and I understand like in that chapter it talked about that her father isn't well, and to get there she would have had to go through some, like he hadn't been up and moving around his realm as much. And so sometimes there's this descent that can start to happen,
right?
And she was unsure whether she should, right? And also if she goes there, she knows that she's kind of bringing, the Riverlands into war.
Well, and the Riverlands are also, right next to the Westerlands, right? So it's a lot quicker to get to Casterly Rock, to River Run, excuse me, than it is to the Vale and to the Eyrie, right? And if you go to the Eyrie, if you think about it, if Tywin wanted to march an army all the way to the Eyrie, he would have to go through River Run and then try and march an army up to the Vale, which is so difficult because you have a bigger army. You're definitely going to get attacked by these clansmen, and kind of some guerrilla warfare, where it is probably easier for 2 or 3 people to, or maybe 5 to kind of slip through.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it just makes for a good story. We think she's going to Winterfell because remember her original task was to go up there and to call the banners secretly, to get to White Harbor if she could, and and do that thing. I'm also surprised that they didn't go back on boat, like they had.
I am too.
You know what I mean? Like they decide to, and maybe they were. Maybe I need to look at the map. Like maybe the crossroads in there is along the way to where they would have taken boats. But no, they actually come right in at King's Landing on a boat. So I don't know. Just interesting stuff. So. Okay, let's. So, anything else with more, often and loudly?
No, we can move on. Yeah.
Okay. So the second one you have here, a Lannister always pays his debts, which he reminds everyone.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's such a cool little thing. So, number one, he's going to repay you if you do him kind, and he's also going to He's going to repay you if you do him ill. And so he's kind of remembering that and thinking about that with Marillion, this singer, which, by the way, Marillion, you got to pay attention to these characters, sticks around for quite a while.
Yeah.
And, has a pretty decent role to play.
Right. So. Well, and there's a part later where he says, and I have it, we'll talk about all the way at the end, where he reminds Marillion that, something about he taunts him. And he says something about, remember that Craven sounds an awfully lot like the word raven. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
because he was trying to think of words that would rhyme with imp, like limp and gimp. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So. And it's just and then in the next chapter, I think it's the next, I don't know if it's Tyrion or Catelyn's chapter, but where they're getting close to the Vale and then I think actually go up. That's where I think it is actually a Catelyn chapter because she's noticing that when they're like sleeping at night that Bronn and Tyrion are talking a lot. She does not like that. Yeah. So and that's something later we see with Tyrion where he is, well, I have a lot of money, just so you know, like because he's a sellsword. He isn't sworn to Catelyn Stark or Catelyn Tully.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And that's the neat part about knowing that he's a sellsword, and not he doesn't. Owe anyone any allegiance or anything. So, yeah. But
then this is when we actually kind of we start to get that back and forth between Tyrion and Catelyn, right? Where Tyrion is saying like the price for my head is kind of like an awful lot, and Catelyn's like the Starks we're not murderers like you Lannisters are. And then we get what I think is actually it may be like the most interesting part of this chapter is when Tyrion starts to talk to her about Littlefinger. And he sees like a little bit of doubt in her eyes, actually. And he, let me see here. It's kind of
just on his trustworthiness. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she says the Starks do not murder in their people murder men in their beds, nor do I. Tyrion says, "I tell you again, I had no part in the attempt to kill your son. The assassin was armed with your dagger." Tyrion felt the heat rise in him. "It was not my dagger. How many times must I swear to that, Lady Stark? I am not a stupid man. Obviously, only a fool would arm a common footpad with his own blade." Just for a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Why would Patyr lie to me? Why does a bear shit in the woods? He maddened because it is in his nature. Lying comes as easily as breathing to a man like Littlefinger. You ought to know that, you of all people. She took a step toward him, her face tight. "And what does that mean, Lannister?" Tyrion cocked his head. "Why, every man at court has heard him tell how he took your maidenhood. That, my lady, that is a lie," Catelyn Stark said. "Old wicked little imp." Then Marion goes on. Kind of go back here. "Patyr Baelish loved me once. He was only a boy. His passion was a tragedy for us all, but it was real and pure and nothing to be made mock of. He wanted my hand. That is the truth of the matter. You are truly an evil man, Lannister. And you are truly a fool, Lady Stark." Littlefinger. "Littlefinger has never loved anyone but Littlefinger, and I promise you that it is not your hand he boasts of. It's those ripe breasts of yours and that sweet mouth and the heat between your legs."
Shimmy.
I know, man. That's Tyrion. Like he lets it go.
Telling her how it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think he makes a really the first really good point is, he's already shown her. I think she can figure out how clever he is, and when he makes the comment like, "Why would I arm my own man with my own Valyrian steel dagger that's very much like connected to me or something? Why would I do something like that?"
Yeah.
That's just that's
It would
foolish.
be dumb. It would totally be dumb.
Right. And so it's not his dagger. That's the case he's making, and I believe Tyrion. It's not his dagger. So we get into that more of that later at the end of the chapter. But then, yeah, I mean, he's been at court listening to Littlefinger, boast in this way. Could you imagine if? And she, I don't think she knows that. I don't think she knows that he's down at court boasting like this. And I kind of almost wonder if Ned hears some of that, whispered around the court. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
But there's also, don't forget, there's that little piece where Littlefinger was, later on we get more story about how he was drunk, and it could have been Lysa, all that good stuff.
It probably actually was Lysa.
Yeah. I think that it was, but it's just interesting. That, I wonder if he actually thinks that. I wonder if he actually...
Maybe he does.
Knows. Maybe he does actually just think that it was Catelyn. Because I think Lysa might have been pretending to be her sister. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at all that again. But, yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. So then is when the attack kind of happens. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, they're just going on. They're going on a little bit more, and the next thing you start to hear kind of rustling, and they talk about steel, and it's riders, and they think it's around 20 people, and Tyrion is like, gets up and he's like, hey, like, give me a weapon so I can help. Mm-hmm. And Catelyn doesn't want to. Of course, Tyrion does end up getting a sword later and actually fights in it.
Right. Yeah. Well, he says something like that how 3 to 4 swords could make all the difference. Mm-hmm. And he's actually right.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, and it seems, like out the gate, you're kind of like shocked, like wow, they are really outnumbered, and they are. But then you learn more about these clansmen, and
and they're not very good and
malnourished, so they look big. They're wearing these big cloaks and things, but they really don't have the energy or the stamina. They're just I don't know. So.
No, not to go up against guys like Bronn, right? I mean, and a Master of Arms,
Sir Roderick.
Sir Roderick. I mean,
another one who actually got my attention was the Hedge Knight.
Yeah,
Sir Willis Woad.
Yeah,
he's the knight of House Woad. He is sworn to House Went, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And I'm going to bring it up now, if that's okay, just a little side, because we get into this fight, and I'm sort of like, as I was reading it, I was like, well, hold on a second, who is this guy? I mean, I remember he's in the show, actually. Mm-hmm. There's an actor who plays him in the show, but he's at the crossroads, right? He takes up the call there, and he kind of skipping ahead. There's 2 little bits about him. He's in A Feast of Crows as well, but he remains at the Bloody Gate upon the party's arrival at the Vale of Arryn. He's in attendance when Tyrion demands a trial by combat. So skipping ahead again, this is a reread. But for in A Feast of Crows, on the journey to the lift, on the journey to lift the siege of Riverrun, Sir Jaime Lannister and his host come across the lands once held by the brothers Woad, 2 landed knights sworn to Harrenhal. Jaime encountered neither member of the Woad family or their small folk, but finds both of their timber keeps burned down and hangs several outlaws sheltered in their cellar beneath one of the ruined halls. So I just thought there's another, reference to House Woad, and and these two knights that are known to be kind of prestigious, renowned in that area. So so apparently Sir Willis is not. He's no slouch.
Yeah.
So that was that was my whole kind
for
of,
sure. Yeah.
Anytime I see a hedge knight, I want to jump on it and just figure out more about this person. So
yeah, and I thought it was kind of interesting where it talks about, like, because this is the first time we see Tyrion fight. We don't really know much about him at this point in fighting. We know he fights in a couple battles later. I thought it was funny where Sir Roderick shouts like Winterfell, and he rides to meet a guy, and Willis Woad is yelling Harrenhal, Harrenhal. It's like Tyrion felt a sudden urge to leap up, brandishing his axe and boom out Casterly Rock, but the insanity passed quickly and he crouched down. He's like, yeah,
Yes.
He's like, maybe
That's
not,
funny. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and I think Tyrion kind of jumps out and kind of slashes at some horses as they ride by, and then he does end up killing killing someone, and then Catelyn actually kills someone too.
Yeah. Well, Tyrion buries that axe into the chest of that horse, which was crazy to bring it down, and then it fell over on Marillion. Remember, Marillion gets his fingers broken and everything.
Yeah.
And he's kind of laying there screaming, and he's like seeing blood everywhere, and Tyrion's like, "It's horse blood. Shut up."
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
It's kind of hilarious.
I was trying to remember back because this is a really memorable scene from the show, and I was just trying to remember. I think it goes. I mean, it's similar, but I remember Tyrion kills someone with a shield, I think. And I don't think he kills someone with a shield that's going to attack Catelyn, which is similar here. Someone's going to attack Catelyn, and he doesn't. He goes actually to save her. We get that kind of internal monologue where he thinks, "Oh, I could let her die," but he doesn't do it. And in the show, I just remember him attacking someone with a shield, but I don't think Catelyn kills someone in the show.
Yeah, I don't think she does either.
I don't think she does.
I can't remember.
I think Tyrion just kills someone, and that's kind of the show's way of quickly kind of showing, hey, Tyrion's not like, maybe he's a better guy than you thought. Thing, and I think it's just kind of a way to end that scene a little bit quicker for the show. You only have limited time and still kind of get across the same point.
Yeah, right. Well, I think just the internal monologue, the dialogue that he was having with himself there, I think it even says too that once he thinks that thought, but his feet were already moving toward, like he was already he's thinking that thought as he's rushing towards her. You know what I mean?
Right here.
Real lighthearted.
Yeah, right here. Catelyn Stark was trapped against the stone face of the mountain with 3 men around her, one still mounted and the other 2 on foot. She had a dagger clutched awkwardly in her maimed hands, but her back was to the rock now, as they have penned her on 3 sides. Let them have the bitch, Tyrion thought, and welcome to her. Yet somehow he was moving. He caught the first man in the back of the knee before he even knew he was there, and the heavy axe head split flesh and bone like rotted wood, logs that bleed, Tyrion thought. Inanely, as the second man came for him, Tyrion ducked under his sword, lashed out with an axe, and the man reeled backwards. And Catelyn Stark stepped up behind him and opens his throat, and that's kind of how that ends.
Yeah.
Then this is funny. Your first battle, Bronn asked later as he bent over Jick's body, pulling off his boots. And Tyrion said, "My father would be so proud." He said, "You need a woman now." And Tyrion, is this where he says, like, "I'm game if she is"?
Yeah.
Well, kind of like looking at Catelyn. Yeah.
Right. And that's where he wins over like a couple of the men in arms there. Like they laughed with him, Right. And then he thinks to himself like, good, they're laughing, that's a step in the right direction for me, so
right,
because he's actually kind of shown to be honorable here. Like he defends Lady Stark. He actually saves her life and was willing to put down his axe once he had gotten it. Even though he wanted to keep it, he was willing to put it down, but she actually lets him keep his axe, which is kind of cool.
Right, and then this is interesting. They talk about how we have to bury our dead, right?
Yeah.
We must bury our dead. And they say the soil's too stony for digging. He says, then we will gather stones for cairns, and so that's, I just find that interesting too. That Catelyn is very specific about we have to bury our dead.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just sort of her wanting to do what's right, but they can't. Sir Willis and even I think Sir Roderick, maybe not Sir Roderick. No, Bronn. Bronn's the one who was sort of like, I'm not waiting around for that. Well, like basically saying we'll be dead. That's just asking for us to die. And so, you could bury the dead and then you can join the dead if you'd like right now, or we can live.
Right.
And and move on. And it's sad. Later on they end up hearing the what do they call those cats up in the
shadow cats?
Shadow cats. Yeah, they hear them kind of eating the corpses later at night. So
yeah, Yeah, and so then they just kind of go back and forth, and she's like, "You still don't have my trust, right? I trust you no more than I did before."
Yeah,
and
keep it.
Yeah, keep it. Yeah, and then it just the way this kind of ends is is she looks at him, lips pressed tightly together. As I was saying before, we were so rudely interrupted. Tyrion began, before like this whole attack happens, right? He still goes back to it. There's a serious flaw in Littlefinger's fable. Whatever you may believe of me, Lady Stark, I promise you this: I never bet against my family. And that's kind of like a, he's thinking back to when I was saying quite loudly, Tywin, Lannister will be very curious where I am. Surely my brother Jaime will come for me. That's like what he's thinking about and stuff like that. Because as we know, he names Jaime his champion to fight with him in his battle by combat,
right?
In at the Vale,
right? Yeah, which he's entitled to, but then they kind of use like some wordsmithing, right? To force him into a trial by combat on that day. But yeah, you're right. That's a good point. And so he has this, and I think she probably, as he's saying this, is thinking, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, that's not something Tyrion would do. He seems to be very proud of his family and boasting, right. Even though his father, treats him the way he does. He definitely has a good relationship with his brother, and he's right. proud of his accomplishments and the Lannisters through, him in a sense. So it feels like he has to do, his own, whether he uses his own wit and cleverness to further the Lannister influence. That's what he's going to do. So, but So, an interesting. Was there anything else there at the end? I think it's just more of he mocks the singer, right? And thinks about
right.
Jick. Thinks about Jick a little bit, one of his men who died, who was riding like bareback into the fight, super brave, but,
right,
dies. So, I think that's about it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So okay, all right. Do we have a Raven for this week?
I got a Raven in there. So we're good on that. Let me just pull back up the doc here.
Oh, okay.
And really, there were no. I was trying to think of other cool connections that we could have made with that chapter, but besides the clansmen who will come
right.
back into play later.
Right, yeah, it's interesting. Then Tyrion ends up meeting up with those clans. He runs into those clansmen again.
Yeah,
and then it's kind of funny. They stick around for like a while, like
yes, they do.
Couple of books. They're just kind of hanging out, like with Tyrion.
Yeah.
They fight in the Battle of the Blackwater, and they're kind of like Tyrion's personal guard.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
It is weird. Yeah. What is the main one's name? Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Shagger.
Yeah, like,
Shagger.
Like,
there's another one I can't remember. There's a couple.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be a
Shagger
trivia
Azor
question.
High?
Oh God. Or Jackin, Hagar somehow, or something.
Yeah. That's true. So.
Okay. All right. So we have a Raven. I think, who's this from here, Sir Matt? Esquire Yonkers.
I believe so.
I think so.
Is that how they signed off? So okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is cool. This is someone new. This is really neat. Okay, so, dear Sir Ezra the Watchful and dear Sir Matt the Bud Knight, just caught up with the podcast and had some thoughts about how the Game of Thrones starts. Peter Baelish wants Catelyn Stark, so he convinces Lysa to kill her husband. Wow. Okay, and sends Catelyn the letter, knowing that Baelish wants.
No. Knowing that Robert would send for Eddard Stark to be his hand.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, gotcha. So let me read that again. So Peter Baelish wants Catelyn Stark, so he convinces Lysa to kill her husband and send Catelyn the letter, knowing that Robert would send for Eddard Stark. Kill Eddard or send him to the wall, and Catelyn is single again, wherein he also gets power over the north. His plans go south. Catelyn dies, so he takes Lysa and the Vale. Let's see. I think Peter is going to run into Lady Stoneheart. Wow. And wins, and they're going to team up. Adjoining thread here, Peter mentions something about the faceless men when Robert is talking about killing Dany, which I think we talked about that a little bit. Or no, we haven't got there yet, but we've mentioned it before. I think he puts Lysa in touch with a faceless man to kill the Hand, which is why Jaqen / Syrio is in King's Landing in the first place.
Wow.
Okay. Let me pick that apart here a little bit.
Just real quick, what jumped out to me, and is actually something I hadn't thought about, is will Peter Baelish actually run into Lady Stoneheart?
Yeah, that's back to Lady Stoneheart. I know that's a great
for sure, because
nugget.
That actually, because as we know, Lady Stoneheart isn't really prevalent, right? She's not in the show, and that a lot of that Winterfell stuff in season 7, I think, could be totally different. In the books, because it just felt like they just needed something for those characters to do in season 7, and it would maybe Arya still is the one who kills him, but maybe it's because Arya meets up with Lady Stoneheart or something. I don't know, but I would think it would be interesting, or if Catelyn as Lady Stoneheart is the one to kill him.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think here, like, how did Peter Baelish have much to do with the Red Wedding? Just it might seem like a kind of a dumb question, but
no,
I just was trying to think if there's any other, if he's somehow indirectly connected. Okay, all right, because that's really all the Lannisters,
right?
Set up there. I mean, even though he's still, working. For
in a way, he screws over. He screws over Ned Stark, which causes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like this Raven because it is all about like Peter Baelish having his own. He's like, what is he up to? What is his end game here? And the idea that he would convince Lysa to kill her husband. That's crazy, isn't it? That's something, huh? And then and then basically that would send Catelyn the letter, knowing that Robert would send for Eddard Stark, and then he could. So basically, he wants to get Ned in King's Landing near him, where he can set him up in some way, or have him stumble across the same thing that maybe. So hey, maybe Jon Arryn's asking questions because Peter Baelish put some information in front of him. You know what I mean? Maybe he's the one who kind of figures it out and says, "All right, let me set in motion a couple things here." Let's have Jon Arryn look into this, get Jon Arryn killed, get Ned Stark down here, have him look into the same thing, and knowing that he'll accuse the Queen, and then be taken out. Maybe that's part of his game there. So now the next piece that's kind of interesting is that he's going to. His plan was originally to go with Catelyn, but she dies, so he takes up with Lysa. I get that, and then he's going to run into Lady Stoneheart and team up with her. So what would their goal then be? That would be tricky for me, because she's kind of just on like a revenge quest. It feels like she's just out for vengeance.
Wait, we'll think about kind of what happens in the show. Now, obviously, the books in the show are kind of different because in the show, it's Sansa who Littlefinger, he kisses her in the Vale, right? And he also gives her to Ramsay Bolton, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now in the books, it's it's not. It's like a fake Arya Stark,
right?
But still, if you're Lady Stoneheart and you find out that Littlefinger was the real. Maybe she finds out that she was the reason. He's the reason that Ned died. Essentially. Ned, to be fair, Ned still probably would have gotten caught or captured or something in that chamber, right? Littlefinger just kind of slides up behind him, so we always just kind of assume. But that's the first thought we think of was Littlefinger's really the one who screws him over. But so there's that, and then also if she finds out that Littlefinger sold essentially Arya Stark, air quotes, her daughter to the North, the Boltons, who are the Winterfell's least favorable liege lord, and the ones who basically screwed them over at the Red Wedding, and all of this stuff. I don't think she's going to be very pleased.
No. No, and even if she doesn't know that, I actually think if Peter does run into her, then he's going to be sort of like at her mercy,
Yeah.
because even Brienne like is taken in, and it's kind of shocking, like they do what she asks, like they're following Lady Stoneheart with their own vengeance, like with
Right. I mean, Lady
with this-
Stoneheart is like not Catelyn Stark. I mean, like she
No.
seems like her own total thing, right? Yeah. I mean, like,
right, yeah. So I don't know.
yeah. Or maybe he
pretty-
does, or maybe it's like one of these weird things where he is like Catelyn, like he thinks Catelyn Stark, and then he comes upon her, realizes, something's off here. You know what I mean? And maybe he finds her like disgusting or something, and he kind of says that, like that whole kind of love angle is kind of played out. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that could be. I would love to have him run into her in the books. That would be fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I would too. And in the show, remember, he kills her sister, kicks her out the moon door.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, maybe that kind of plays out similarly in the books, and then he meets up with Lady Stoneheart. Yeah, I think it would be way more satisfying if it's either Sansa or Lady Stoneheart that does that kills him, rather than Arya kind of, like oddly.
Yeah, because I mean
in the show.
Yeah.
Because Arya doesn't really interact with him.
That's what I was going to say.
In the books or the show. Like, she doesn't really know him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, I mean, well, and we do know, so Peter Baelish, he kind of takes over after Lysa's death, right? He kind of takes over there at the Vale. So he's at least right now. Remember, there's that whole bit with they're kind of coming to see, what his intentions are. Like, some of the different houses, major houses there in the Vale are kind of coming up to see Peter. Yeah. So.
Yeah, because she kind of she kind of has him there as her, like, Sansa has him there kind of as her like advisor, right, when she like gets to Winterfell, which is weird.
Yeah. So.
And he's trying to tell. Like, remember, he's trying to tell her how to play the Game of Thrones. Like, he gives her that really weird look when Jon is crowned King of the North. Obviously show talking.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I kind of wonder. Let me just look real fast here. No, I don't think she did. I was looking at whether Sansa revealed herself or not yet, and I don't know. That might happen the same way. But anyways, he's kind of in a position of power, so he might stay there in the Vale for as long as he can, and then we'll see how he gets in connection with either Lady Stoneheart or the the North, Winterfell. So yeah, I think he'll stay close. I think he'll stay close to Sansa for a while. I don't see those two splitting up. So because I don't see Sansa also showing up with seeing her mother, Lady Stoneheart. I don't know. That'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Crazy to think about all the people who could interact with Lady Stoneheart. It's just
I know, absolutely, yeah,
kind of mind blowing, just a little bit. So, okay, awesome. That was a good Raven. Appreciate the that. You guys can send those to btkcast@gmail.com, and we always pull something out that's kind of makes us think, about the series in a different way, and that one definitely did that for us. So,
yeah. So
okay.
All right. Well, I think that's kind of it.
Yeah,
for
that's
this week. Real quick before we kind of sign off here, as I'm looking at our sign off here, we're in chapter 32 next week.
Yeah,
I think we're over halfway through this book.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And do you feel like, I mean, we've actually even in this first book, I was worried we wouldn't be able to make as many connections or find some of these cool. There's so many though.
There's so many. Yeah.
It's so worthy of, and this is where everything is set up from. So
well, I think it just speaks to Gur as a writer. Is clearly he had some bigger plan from the get go. So
this stuff just came to him. I don't know. I love to hear him talk about how the story has evolved and how he writes it and how it's.
And it all started out as the actual chapter 1 of Game of Thrones. He talks about, I just had this idea of this chapter, like just a chapter. When we listened to those little like mini podcasts he had done, there's like the 6 podcasts where he done, and he talks a lot about like, I wrote short stories, And he's like, I wanted to start small. That way, when the time came when I wanted to do something big, I'd kind of already established myself.
Yeah.
And he talks about how Game of Thrones just came to him as a chapter. He just had this thought of this idea of this young boy standing with his father, who's like a knight or something.
Yeah.
And his father explaining to him why we have to behead this man.
Yeah.
And like that's how it started. That's just the initial thought.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Like, and then White Walkers and everything came later, but
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's a cool thought.
So all right. Well, we want to thank you for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing Chapter 32, Arya 3.
Yep. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com.
We will see you in a week, and remember, winter is coming.